I'm going to talk about what's going on in Venezuela through the story of Trump's pride. And that has to do with the Nobel Peace Prize. So right now in Venezuela, the country is run by Delcy Rodriguez and the armed forces. And there is a lot of power shifting that's going on right now that a lot of us just don't have the access to the information. It's not a question of, oh, I haven't read enough online. It's a question of we simply cannot peer into a system that has the blinds pulled in and where the public right now feel nervous about, how they behave on the street, how going out, how, they would be treated if they were to even appear between, let's start asking questions. So if the public doesn't have an idea really what's going on, and whether or not Delcy Rodriguez is going to stay, where the negotiations between the Trump administration and her are also peered behind these blinds, it's very difficult to understand exactly what it's going to look like in a month, 2, 3, or 4, or 5, or 6. But what we can say is right now, Delcy Rodriguez, still a part of the Chavismo system, one of, I wouldn't say, right-hand man, but a right-hand woman of Nicolas Maduro, is now president of the country. And there is no election that's coming in the near future. Zero on the horizon. This was not a regime change operation in the way typically people think about it. This is what someone might call a dictator change, an autocrat shift, a tyrant shuffle, if you will. But it was not a shifting of the military. It was not a shifting of those who control, the flow of flow of oil. It was a shifting of the leadership under the idea that this new leader might be more amenable to talk to the United States and negotiate a deal where Donald Trump can manage Venezuela's wealth in offshore accounts, which is what the president's openly discussing when it comes to their export of fuel. So that's what the president wanted. The president wanted a Venezuelan leader that wasn't necessarily more democratic, that wasn't necessarily more, respecting of people's civil liberties, even though these things would obviously make Trump look good. And there were people in his immediate circle who would like to see the end of Chavismo. At the end of the day, Donald Trump has other priorities. And those other priorities, as we talked about on this channel before, has to be number one, the fuel. But I think this might be number one still, maybe 1.1 instead of 2, but also the mass displacement of people. If the Maduro regime goes down and all of Chavismo goes down with it, and then the country starts scuffling with gangs and remnants of the military and pro-democracy forces or any type of fighting that could follow a collapse of the government if stability is not quickly restored, that could lead to a mass displacement of people, a further cratering of the economy, and not only more work to rebuild the Venezuelan energy sector, but also more work from Donald Trump, maybe when it comes to guarding the southern border from a mass flow of people. And so I think his prioritization of stopping that, of getting a government that will cooperate with him when it comes to moving people back to Venezuela, that means mass deportations. For example, that one man that was shot in the leg recently by that ICE agent, after that ICE agent was reportedly, according to DHS, getting hit with like a shovel as he was trying to run away. Other locals, like other people, jumped in, tried to stop him. That man was an undocumented Venezuelan person in the United States. And that person will, from the Trump administration's perspective, want to be sent back to Venezuela. And in order to be able to get that type of cooperation, they want a government in Caracas that will work with them on that. And if Delcy Rodriguez will work with them on that, and Delcy Rodriguez will stop a massive civil war or chaos that could lead to the displacement of more people, possibly towards the United States, and if Delcy Rodriguez is willing to maybe, even if it's not in major direct action, but pay lip service to cracking down on drugs and crack down on the actual amounts of drugs that do go through the country. But when it comes to the region, it's really not a high percentage, but maybe she could do that, publicly signal it, give Trump that public victory. And if she can work with him on all these things, on the drug flow, the parts of it that do exist, even though I feel that this was more of a justification in order to aim towards other goals. If he can get a victory on getting control of a lot of their energy wealth, if he can get a victory when it comes to getting control of the flow of migrants back to Venezuela and stopping a new flow of migrants from potentially developing due to chaos from this regime collapsing, then I think from Trump's perspective, why roll the dice again? He already rolled the dice when it came to removing Maduro, and Americans heard no fatalities, and that was basically all they remembered of it. The fact that American service members were shot in the leg, or the amount of risk that they were put under, or the potentiality for fatalities, or the fact that you could have ran this operation 9 times out of 10 and it maybe got different results. All of that's not really what gets focused on in the aftermath of these operations. Just how it happened, how it succeeded. Does he want to roll the dice again and have to do this with Delcy Rodriguez, or try to find some other means to remove her by working with locals, and then, oh wait, these people end up fighting with these? Does he really want to do that? And so I think right now the administration is very comfortable to sit back and see if Delcy Rodriguez plays ball enough with the administration in order for the administration to back off on the remnants of Chavismo, which is essentially the rest of the government. I mean, it's not like after Maduro went, like well, again, we cannot peer into clearly. It's not like Chavismo was Maduro. It's not called Maduro. It's called Chavismo. It comes from a man who's already dead, but that legacy of the movement, the legacy of that wealth redistribution programs, and putting the power in the hands or the idea of putting power in the hands of the dispossessed and the economically destitute and the largely native population, and then using that to eventually degrade against civil liberties after the 2002 coup, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's still there. The people who were there before the 2002 coup and the people that were there after the 2002 coup, that's still there. Those people are still there. But now Delcy Rodriguez is in place. So the regime is staying. And so this presents a really difficult problem for those who wanted regime change in Venezuela, or a chance at democracy in Venezuela. And instead, right now, you have Delcy Rodriguez taking power, and there is no say on when an election is supposed to happen, even though technically, in an event like this, even though they're keeping Maduro as the incumbent president, he's obviously not coming back ever. So that incumbent president is gone. She is the president. There's been no announcement of an election, even though there's supposed to be an election in 30 days. And so right now, democracy has been either put on the back burner or disregarded entirely by the Trump administration when it comes to what's a priority in Venezuela. And Trump has been pretty open about his priorities now in Venezuela when it comes to energy and when it comes to stability. And that makes it strange to see the opposition leader, who Trump said had no juice, basically had no gas in Venezuela, despite winning the primary, despite those results, saying, she just doesn't have that support on the ground. When he says that, though, by the way, I think some people think in their head, but wait, if she won this election, then obviously she does. He's not talking about the people. He might be in part talking about there's people who support her, and there's people who maybe are not the biggest fan of her, but there's people on the ground who support her. I think he might also be talking about the people with guns, people with power, the people with influence, the people who can go on the street and produce bodies of the opposition, whoever their opposition may be, right? And so if she doesn't have support in those circles, which we have no reason to believe so, and Trump doesn't want, a type of civil disturbance that could turn into chaos that could then flow towards the United States, he might not be that big of a fan of any demand to replace Delcy Rodriguez with Machado, or maybe even initially say you must have an election right away. Or I don't even know if he's going to be calling for an election at all, inevitably, if that's going to be a demand of the United States. That might be something that's on Marco Rubio's head. That might be something that Marco Rubio brings up more and more and more down the line. But I don't really think that's a priority of the President of the United States, which makes it all the stranger that Machado, this opposition leader, has given her Nobel Prize that she won to Donald Trump. Now, this is not the first time that this has happened, and we'll talk about a different time that a Nobel Prize has been given to a world, we'll call them a world leader, a world leader before. But it sure is strange to see this. considering Donald Trump has talked on and on and on about how he needs to win a Nobel Prize. The Nobel Committee has not considered him that seriously because they don't believe that he has met the standards of like contributing significantly to world peace, contributing significantly to development of, you know, the human species in that way. They don't believe that he's done that. And so he hasn't gotten a Nobel Prize. So instead, he gets this. I think this is embarrassing for everybody involved. I think this is embarrassing for Machado, and I think this is probably more embarrassing for her, considering what the result of this will probably ultimately be. But I also think this is embarrassing for the President of the United States, despite that shit-eating grin. Let me read what this says here. To President Donald J. Trump, in gratitude for your extraordinary leadership in promoting peace through strength, advocating diplomacy, and defending liberty and prosperity, the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize model awarded and Maria Corina Machado, presented as a personal symbol of gratitude on behalf of the Venezuelan people and recognition of President Trump's principled and decisive action to secure a free Venezuela. The courage of America and the President Donald J. Trump will never be forgotten by the Venezuelan people. Okay, let's be clear. The Venezuelan people are not free from the Maduro regime. They're free from Maduro, not the rest of the regime. The rest of the regime is still there. So in her idea of a free, if Venezuela is free, then do I still need to care about her? Do I still need to listen to her? Can we just, okay, we forget, goodbye, bye-bye. They're not free. The purpose of this is diplomacy. The purpose of this is they know that Donald Trump has an ego that stretches far beyond his means. And to stroke that ego is to get close to the man. Now, that's not to say that's the only way. And even I would say in some instances, to only stroke his ego, he actually might get offended. You need to be beneficial to him while also being able to show your ability to please his image. And so I think that she has an ability to please his image with a Nobel Peace Prize like this. I think she has that ability, but I don't think that she might not be useful in the achievement of his goals past that. I don't think so. And so while this is an attempt at diplomacy to try to remind Donald Trump about a free Venezuela, because if he looks at that and it's, a free Venezuela, and Delcy Rodriguez's goons are out there beating the people, well, then that's going to seem pretty strange to be hung on the wall. Of course, he could just remove the Nobel Peace Prize and make his own thing. A Nobel Peace Prize for fucking bombing the terrorists and doing awesome. Whatever he would put on there. I don't think it would be bombing the terrorists and doing awesome, but it would probably be like doing big diplomacy bigly and destroying evil, something along those lines. Whatever it would be. Peace through war, whatever it would be. Either way, I don't think this is going to achieve what she wants it to achieve. But let's listen to her express to the media afterwards why she gave this to Donald Trump.
Maria, did you offer to President Trump your Nobel Peace Prize?
I presented the President of the United States the medal of the Nobel Peace Prize, and I told him this. Listen to this. 200 years ago, General Lafayette gave Simón Bolívar the medal.
When will the staff of the Washington Post give the president their 2025 Pulitzer?
No, that's a good question. That's a good question. Also, why hasn't somebody given Donald Trump Best Director? Why hasn't somebody given Trump best musician in a screenplay? Like, why haven't we given him every award? It's not because it's never going to be enough, right? It's not going to be, now he's got this, now he's done. No, now it's got to be, okay, now give me a real one. I want 2 Nobel Peace Prizes. I want her Nobel Peace Prize, and I want one that officially has my name on it. Norway, if you give me a Nobel Peace Prize for not invading Greenland, how about that? It's going to be something like that. Or it's going to be a totally new award. It's going to be some totally new, trinket that he needs to focus on. And that's why, by the way, he rolls so well with the UAE and the Saudis, because there's nobody better at producing flashy trinkets than the UAE and the Saudis.
Gave Simón Bolívar a medal with George Washington's face on it. Bolívar since then that medal for the rest of his life. Actually, when you see his portraits, you can see the medal there. And it was given by General Lafayette as a sign of the brotherhood between the United States, people of the United States and the people of Venezuela in the fight for freedom and tyranny. And 200 years in history, the people of Bolivar are giving back the hair of Washington a medal, in this case the medal of the Nobel Peace Prize, as a recognition for his unique commitment with our freedom.
Okay, so if you could not make that out because, you know, she isn't exactly given the expert treatment here when it comes to the sound. She is basically retelling the story of when General Lafayette, who was a general during the American Revolution, you know, an important general in America's history, gave, who of course has the ties to the French, gave a medal to Simon Bolivar, or it was a medal with George Washington's image on it that was given to Simon Bolivar by General Lafayette. And so she was retelling the story to Donald Trump in the White House, talking about the deep ties between the country and how she was trying to almost in a way, like, repay the gesture in some way and trying to tie some historical significance. Now, I don't know if this is just something she's hyping up afterwards to talk to the press, but if she spent a significant time in there trying to convince Donald Trump of the significance of Lafayette's Washington medal to Simon Bolivar and what this means to him, that could have either worked. There's like a 90% chance that he got bored, I'm gonna be honest, and there's a 10% chance that he dug it, that he sees himself as in some way, in some image like these men, right? But I don't think, regardless of whether or not this tickled his fancy or not, even though I guess I knew he definitely wanted the Nobel Peace Prize, I don't think this got her any closer to being either installed as the leader of Venezuela or to an immediate election outcome. Okay? I don't think so. And I think there's two reasons to say that. Number one, listen to Donald Trump talk about Delcy Rodriguez versus Machado.
A very nice person. You said the meeting went well. Why align with Delcy Rodriguez and the remnants of the Maduro regime and not with Machado, who has the support of the Venezuelan people?
Well, if you ever remember a place called Iraq where everybody was fired, every single person, the police, the generals, everybody was fired, and they ended up being ISIS. Instead of just getting down to business, they ended up being ISIS. So I remember that.
So this this idea that ISIS would take over Venezuela if Delcy Rodriguez falls, or if the regime around her is de-Baathified, you know, denazified, I don't know, de-Tojoified. I don't know. I don't remember the exact nature of MacArthur's control of the country or how they described process afterwards. But whatever image he has in his head of that chaos, it could be ISIS, it could be the gang war, it could be whatever. That chaos producing mass displacement of people closer to the United States. Iraq was smack dab in the middle of the Middle East. The people that were most affected, the people who were radicalized, tend to largely attack what's closest to them. While some would make the long trek all the way over to the United States to try to do attacks here, the majority of violence, the majority of chaos caused was right in their backyards. Right in their backyards. So if this is in Venezuela, that means the mass displacement of people will go towards the United States, and whatever image he has of a Caracas ISIS, whatever image he has of the gun-toting cartel gangs that could take over, or whatever image he has, is much closer to the United States. And so I think he has a nervousness about it. And this is interesting because in these bold proclamations about America's need to control Latin American foreign policy and the Don Road Doctrine. Instead of the Monroe Doctrine, it's the Don Road Doctrine. There was a lot of talking about the need for America to establish itself, to assert itself here, but exactly how it will do so while avoiding the type of chaos that he's talking about right now, that's going to be an interesting balancing act. Because is he going to just keep rolling the dice on operations like he did on Maduro? Would he do it to Delcy Rodriguez in 6 months if she just drags him along? Or will he try to pay off some other general to do a coup? And what if that coup fails and there's a bunch of street violence? Like there was a willingness to assert oneself, but there wasn't particularly any new strategy about how we would assert oneself without repeating the mistakes of old. As we repeat the mistakes of old in reference to Greenland in dramatic fashion. Anyway, I think another reason why I don't think she's going to get much help here is, well, this is what she got a gift bag, dude. She got a gift bag. That's what she got. That's the only discernible 100% thing we know that she got while meeting with President Trump is a Donald Trump gift bag.
Was she off?
And she said, and he said it was a nice gesture that she gave him the medal.
Well, she offered it to me. I thought it was very nice. She said, you know, you've ended 8 wars, and nobody deserves this prize more than in history than you do. And I thought it was a very nice gesture. And by the way, I think she's a very fine woman, and we'll be talking again. I had a great meeting yesterday by a person who I have a lot of respect for, and she has respect, obviously, for me and our country. And she gave me her Nobel Prize. But I'll tell you what, I got to know her. I never met her before, and I was very, very impressed. She's this is a fine woman.
She's a fine woman. You never met her before, and she gave him a Nobel Prize for the 8 wars that he ended, which includes the Congo, which is still going on, Thailand and Cambodia, which is not resolved. Many of these wars, many of them were not even active. He resolved for example, the Armenian and Azerbaijani war when it was not active, and we have yet to see the actual U.S. troops that he said he would deploy deployed. Also, I'm interested to see what a lot of Trumpers are going to think about more troops being deployed in the Caucasus. That's a totally new hey, we're deploying more troops there. That's interesting. We're expanding our troop deployments. I'm sure the anti-interventionists will talk about this today. We'll talk about their vote for Trump today. Now, there's one last thing I want to talk about. So this is not the first time something like this has happened. As embarrassing as I think it is that Donald Trump is getting awarded Nobel Peace Prize and it's secondhand. And the Nobel Committee has been clear that you cannot re-gift Nobel Prizes. That's not how it works. He is not the first person to have gone through this process. There was a man by the name of Hamsun who was a very, very famous and very well-known author in Norway. He wrote about human beings and their tussle with nature. And okay, look, it doesn't really matter what he wrote about. What matters is that he won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1920. And then when Nazi Germany invaded Norway in April of 1940, he was, let's just say, an admirer of the idea. And he liked Hitler, and he specifically liked Joseph Goebbels. He said in 1940 that the Germans are fighting for us, and later eulogized Hitler as a warrior for mankind and a preacher of the gospel of justice for all nations. Now, when he returned to Norway, while Norway was still being occupied, in 1943, he sent Goebbels, yes, Joseph Goebbels, who he had meetings with, his Nobel Prize medal, writing in a letter on June 17th, 1943, I know of no one who has so tirelessly written and spoken year after year on the cause of Europe and humanity as idealistically as you, her Reichsminister. I beg your pardon for sending you my medal. It is completely a useless thing for you, but I have nothing else to give. Goebbels, he was touched by this and said, I see it as an expression of your connection with our struggle for a useful Europe and a happy society. They've never found it. No clue where it is anymore. But this was the last time that somebody had re-gifted their medal in this nature. Fun fact. I have it, just don't tell anyone. I'll keep it under wraps. I'll keep it under wraps.